Mr. Tavis Smiley, preach it. Thank you, man. Politics in this country is crazy. You put things in perspective that even I didn't. The right is playing fast and loose with facts and scapegoating everyone under the sun, especially black and brown people. As a white man, I do not agree with this, and I am on my black and brown brothers and sisters' side. Fight the good fight. You know that I am part of the resistance. Let's fight the power.
Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Oh, 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 oh. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Oh, oh, oh. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Oh, oh, oh. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Oh. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. KBLA, Talk 1580, download the app.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 80. This is our last show of the year that's live on KBLA Talk 1580. We look forward to speaking with everyone and being with everyone in the new year. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., and this has been the first anniversary of our show, and I am particularly honored and privileged that our executive producer and creator, Gina Towns, convinced me some time ago that we were made for radio, and here we are. So grateful for that, and grateful for all of those of you who are listening and have been supportive of our efforts here on KBLA to be true to the mission of the station, to be true to the mission and the integrity of our people and our movement. I'm very honored that in this first hour, none other than Liz King is our very special guest on the show. Liz is a regular contributor of the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show and recently served as Education Equity Senior Program Director for the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, a position she held from 2015 until 2025. In this role, Ms. King led the organization's work to ensure that all students are fully included in welcoming schools from early childhood through post-secondary education that prepare them for college, careers, life, and the full exercise of their social, political, economic rights. Throughout her tenure at the Leadership Conference, King coordinated the coalition's work to advance equal opportunity in education and represented the civil and human rights community's positions and perspectives on education policy topics in the media, in testimony before the U.S. Department of Education, and during the course of legislative negotiations. Liz, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you so much. Always great to be here with you, Congressman.
Liz, I am very excited about our conversation and the initial discussion that we had about our show today, and that is next year, the nation will turn its attentions to the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And in turning to the Declaration of Independence, the entire nation will spend an entire year reflecting over the period that we've come from the inception of the nation to the present and where we are now in the present. And I can't think of a better person to engage this conversation with over the next hour. We're going to jumpstart it in 2025, knowing full well that 2026 is the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, and we're all going to be reflecting upon some of the precepts and the tenets of that declaration, and obviously some of its shortcomings and the unfinished business of the American Revolution. Liz, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this has been a brutal year, and I think it is an opportunity for us to remind each other, to remind ourselves that the United States has always been an unfinished work. And so as we start thinking about memorializing the founding around 1776 and what it means 250 years later, it's an opportunity for us to keep in mind that, you know, you alluded to just the imperfection, the flaws at the beginning, and the work of the United States in moving towards greater equality, greater opportunity, greater liberty for all of the people who live here. And so I think it's a great opportunity for us to think about, you know, what does the 4th of July mean? What does the Declaration of Independence mean? What does the hypocrisy inherent in that rhetoric mean to us today? And what does it tell us about what the future can mean if we build a more perfect union? And so, I am hopeful that next year will be better than this year, because this has been a very challenging year for almost everyone in almost every corner of this country.
Brutal is the word that you use, and I think that's absolutely right. Brutal. This has been one of the most brutal years in recent American history, and only with hindsight will we be able to look back upon this year and this period to determine the nature of the cruelty and the brutality that America has become at this hour in our founding. I want to set the stage, however, for our conversation, which will be coming forward in about 3 minutes, right after the break. And in part of setting that stage, I want to help our listeners understand that we are making in this conversation, and we will go back and forth between the two documents, we are talking about the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776, an aspirational document. There'll be times when we move to the idea of the Constitution of the United States. That would be September 17th, 1787. Next year, we are commemorating the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. We do not live under the Declaration of Independence. The Supreme Court rules and makes its decisions. The elections in the United States, our laws are passed under the Constitution. And Liz, there's a lot to be said about some of the precepts in the Declaration of Independence, etched and forever in the memory of not only the American people, but in world prose. The magnificent words that Dr. King referred to when referring to Thomas Jefferson, that all men are created equal. Elizabeth Cady Stanton offered a friendly amendment to that by saying all men and women are created equal. And yet, in the throes of that hypocrisy, Native Americans were being slaughtered in a genocide that included Manifest Destiny. African Americans, or Africans, if you will, from 1619 until the end of the slave trade, as Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X acknowledged, were here before Jefferson was even born. 1619, Jefferson was not born in Jamestown in 1619. We were here. The Native Americans were here before Columbus, before the Pilgrims. We were here. And so from a very unique perspective, the history of African Americans and the history of Native Americans, and yes, the history of women, we get to see the formation of the government of the United States from its lofty ideals in September of July of 1776 to what the Constitution ultimately became, calling us 3/5 of a human, referring to us as property rights and property interests, leaving women completely out of the equation, and the division of the government itself with the addition of the Bill of Rights in 1791 that states those rights not written in the Constitution would be forever in the purview of the states, and hence so much is protected in discrimination by states' rights. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. For the next hour, our very special guest is none other than our regular contributor, Liz King, and I'm going to have a countdown for her when we come forward because she's capable of taking us to a place we've never been before. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey, good morning. You're heading to the airport, right?
Yep, thanks for checking. I like the car. How long have you been a rideshare driver?
About 3 years now. I really enjoy it.
Isn't it hard to make money these days with the price of gas being so high?
Not for me. I use Upside, the free app that gives you cash back for every gallon of gas you buy.
Wait a minute. Are you saying you actually get real money back when you get gas with the Upside app?
Yep, I get real cash back every time I get gas.
Does that actually add up to anything?
I'll make around $200 to $300.
Wow, that's serious extra cash. I'm downloading the Upside app now.
Download the free Upside app now to earn real cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code STATE to get up to a $5 per gallon bonus on your first tank. You can cash out anytime, right to your bank account, PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code STATE to get up to a $5 per gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code STATE.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for reentry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is pleased to partner with the Empowerment Congress once again for their 34th annual summit. The summit's theme is From Vision to Action, a forum to unlock participatory democracy, and will feature a nonpartisan gubernatorial candidate forum focused on issues of importance to the African American community. The summit is the signature public policy-oriented observance of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy during the national 3-day holiday weekend that celebrates his life. This year's summit will be held on Saturday, January 17th, 2026 at the California Science Center in Exposition Park from 9 to 11 a.m. Admission is free, but registration is required at KBLA1580.com. All major announced candidates for California governor for the Democratic and Republican Party nominations have been invited to participate in the candidate forum, which will be moderated by Tavis Smiley. An all-star panel of journalists will pose questions to the candidates, and the forum will be broadcast live on KBLA Talk 1580. This is going to be a big year for local, state, and national politics. The political pulse of 2026 beats on KBLA Talk 1580.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Quality drops the beat. Come on and talk with me.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Our last show that's live of the year in 2025. And Liz King is our very special guest in this hour. Liz, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you so much. Excited for the conversation.
I have to figure out from our executive producer what the Liz King hour is going to be called. I don't know if it's lighting it up or lighting it up with Liz King. Oh, lighting it up with Liz King. All right. Well, that's what it's going to be because she says that's what it's going to be. And I appreciate that. I want to just paint a picture in all of 2 minutes of our longest segment, which is 18, of the house that we built as Americans, the house that we built. And I think if we frame the house correctly, we have a better understanding of the conversation that Liz and I are going to engage in. Let's first, before we build the house, we have to have a pre-construction period. We got to assemble all of the stuff we can assemble: the wood, the nails, the timber, the roofing, the sink, the bathrooms. Let's call that pre-construction, 1619 to 1776. There is a pre-construction period. And then in 1776, with the Declaration of Independence through 1861, let's call that the construction period. That's the period that includes the Declaration of Independence, the writing of the Constitution in 1787, the writing of the Bill of Rights in 1791. It includes the process of adding one free state to the Union and one slave state to the Union. Each of those states have 2 United States senators, by the way. And the process that included the Kansas-Nebraska Act and the Missouri Compromise and Manifest Destiny and the westward expansion of the United States. Let's call that the construction of the United States. And then our house burned down from 1861 to 1865. Let's call that the deconstruction of the project. It fell apart. It was built on a shaky foundation. And then there is the first reconstruction of the United States between 1865, after the American Civil War, to 1896. Let's just call that first reconstruction. And then there's Jim Crow until Brown versus the Board of Education from 1896 to 1954. And then there is second Reconstruction, 1954 to the present. And one could largely argue that the Donald Trump Project 2025 and the Donald Trump Project is a deconstruction of the house that we've all built. And there is an effort to rebuild everything from the east wing of the White House to putting his name on the Kennedy Center to building an Arc de Triomphe in Washington, D.C., to naming everything after himself. Let's just call this a new construction project that many of us are not familiar with. With that said, back to 1776, all men are created equal, a lofty ideal and a lofty goal, but it left out a lot of people, Liz King.
No, absolutely. I think, there's just so much to be said here. I think for me, so much of all this comes back to this amazing piece that Michelle Alexander wrote at the beginning of the first Trump presidency. And I forget the title. It was in the New York Times, and it was something like, we are not the resistance, they are. And it was a reminder that the story of America is a story of progress. It is a story of the expansion of rights. And it is true that every time there has been an expansion of rights, and every time there has been an effort to include under the democracy umbrella more of our neighbors, there has been a resistance. And you talk at every point, right? We had that first Reconstruction. We saw a rejection of that, and in the Jim Crow, and then we saw Brown v. Board of Ed, and we saw interposition and nullification, Southern Manifesto. And what we are, they tried in Reagan, they tried to undo the work of the Second Reconstruction. They tried to undo the work of the Civil Rights Movement. And they were successful to a large degree in making people poorer. And I think this is a reminder that you have always shared with us, Congressman, which is about the relationship between civil rights and legal rights and economic opportunity. And that every time there has been a retrenchment, there has been an abandoning of civil rights, there has been an undermining of civil rights, it has always come with it an effort to enrich the rich and to make the poorer poorer, and to make the middle class more poor, to take away economic opportunity. And I think that is exactly what we're seeing right now. We're seeing an effort to narrow the scope of who is part of our American democracy, to narrow the scope of who has legal rights that deserve to be protected, while also making it harder for people to pay bills, making it harder for people to pay the rent, making it harder for people to get the groceries, making it harder for people to get access to healthcare. And it is these patterns that we see over and over again. But I want to come back to another thing that you said that I think was so important, which is this is the 250th anniversary, not of the laws that govern us, but of the idea of who we are, right? The Declaration of Independence has no legal weight other than its tremendous power to define who we think we are as a country. And so I think that is so much of what we're seeing here is not just a question of the law and what the law means, but a question of the story and what the story means and what the story tells us. And, you had talked about sort of where President Lincoln comes in. Obviously, we know the story of Frederick Douglass and what he had to say about the nation's founding. And then we think about the I Have a Dream speech, which was very much King's simultaneous invocation of that story and critique of the incompleteness of that story, right? He famously talks about the promissory note being marked insufficient funds and a rejection of the idea that there is a limit to the liberty available to us. And I think there's just so much here. It's really going to take all of us in this next year to write a new story about who we will be as a people moving forward.
I want to share with you, Liz, that when I think about July 4th, 1776, there isn't a single American, except for maybe Donald Trump and Mr. Miller and some others in the MAGA crowd, that can remember July 4th, 1776. We romanticize what it was and what it meant. And as important a date as it was in reflecting upon the idea of independence, breaking away from the king and the kingdom, if you will, every July 4th, from July 4th, 1776 to the present is a different day. It is a different opportunity to define the meaning of America. On July 4th, 1776, African Americans did not have citizenship rights. They do have them today, in some measure. Native Americans had no citizenship rights on July 4th, 1776, but they do, in some measure, have them today. Women had no citizenship rights on July 4th, 1776, whether they were white women, black women, red women, brown women. They did not have citizenship rights. But they have some semblance of those citizenship rights today. And the most amazing thing about July 4th, and I could go all the way from Frederick Douglass's oration in New York about the hypocrisy of July 4th, right up to Martin Luther King Jr.'s critique in 1963 on August 28th in front of the Lincoln Memorial, a reflection again on the Declaration of Independence. I have found, Liz, the most significant July 4th that intellectually is so difficult for the American people to comprehend is Gettysburg. And I say Gettysburg because more than 50,000, maybe as many as 60,000 Americans lost their lives on that field. And the battle, yes, between North and South, yes, between the Confederate States who wanted to preserve the institution of slavery and the idea of freedom for the Northern states. And African Americans, while they may have been U.S. colored troops at that time, they were not allowed to fight at Gettysburg. That was to be a white man's conflict on that field. But it would be Lincoln, with the dead still unburied, who returns to Gettysburg in November of that year to deliver the Gettysburg Address. You could smell the Gettysburg dead on the entire East Coast. They were decomposing. They had not been buried yet. Nearly 50,000 people in a field. I bring that to our attention because it's almost impossible to imagine when he delivers the Gettysburg Address for us to even think about July 4th, 1776, or any July 4ths, I think 87 of them that came before Gettysburg, maybe 86, what those July 4ths were like. Because every July 4th after Gettysburg is what Lincoln says July 4th is, not what Jefferson and what the architects of the original republic said it was. Every July 4th after Gettysburg, who we would become, who we were trying to become, it took on a new definition. So July 4th, 1963 is a month before Martin Luther King Jr. offers his interpretation of what it means to be an American. There's another July 4th in 2008 when Barack Obama was about to become president of the United States. There's another July 4th when he's obviously elected to a second term. Another definition. There is a July 4th when Kamala Harris is the Democratic nominee for president of the United States, and yet another iteration of the holiday, none of which was imaginable on July 4th, 1776. These dates do matter, Liz.
Absolutely. I think that charting and thinking about our American history through these landmarks of these July 4ths, thinking about the relationship between the battle at Gettysburg, the Gettysburg Address, and then the 14th Amendment, right? Which is in so many ways, the 14th Amendment is what the actual promise that was theoretically offered in the Declaration of Independence. And so how do we think about moving forward the way that we tell this story? Even just thinking about your point about the role of Native people and the fact that Native people who predated all of this were not eligible for citizenship, were not included, were certainly referred to in egregious terms in the Declaration of Independence. But we think about the role of the Iroquois Confederacy in actually creating the democracy that the United States eventually became and is still working to become. We tell a story that is about the Greek roots of American democracy, about English common law, and then we hide the fact and the role of the Iroquois Confederacy and of Native people in creating the foundations for how a democracy would operate. Just in the same way that we think about the construction of the Capitol building, losing sight of the fact that so many of the people who actually physically constructed the Capitol building that was violated on January 6th, we're about to enter into another anniversary, another milestone, which is the anniversary of the January 6th insurrection, an attack on American democracy, that building was built by people who were enslaved, and that at the top of that building was a statue called Freedom. And so how do we reconcile all of this hypocrisy? And I think it is exactly your point. It was what Lincoln called us to do at the Gettysburg Address. It was about moving forward. It is, what is July 6th, 2026 going to mean? What is that July 4th preceding a new election going to mean? What is that July 4th going to mean with respect to our laws and our Constitution and our Congress? And so as we're thinking about 2026, as we're thinking about the year ahead, obviously the New Year's is always a time of looking back and looking forward. I think you have asked a really important question, is what will this next July 4th look like? How will we remember it? How will we mark it? And how will we note the history, the past, the future, and the present?
It's so fascinating because you brought to mind this fascinating tidbit of history that maybe we don't see it that way, but slaves played a significant role in building the capital of the United States from the ground and from the floor up, all the way up to liberty. But then when you reflect that on January 6th, the very people who've enjoyed citizenship rights and their ancestors over a longer period of time than those of us who built the Capitol from the ground and the floor up. One group came to destroy it. Another group is responsible for building it and trying its best to make the system work. I can't think of a greater irony when we reflect upon the significance of the evolution of our nation, not only what we were, what we are, who we are, what we are becoming. It's all a factor when we work our way up to the system and the deconstruction project of MAGA and Donald John Trump. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. More with Liz King as she lights it up on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. The New York Police Department is preparing a major security presence in Times Square for New Year's Eve as more than 1 million people are expected to ring in 2026.
People come here to bring in the new year, and it is our job to make sure they're able to do that in a level of safety.
Black Mayor Eric Adams says there are no credible threats, but the department remains on high alert with new secondary screenings inside viewing areas. Black Florida Congresswoman Sheila Sherfullis McCormick is awaiting arraignment on federal charges accusing her of stealing $5 million in FEMA funds. A judge delayed the case until January 20th to allow her the time to secure legal counsel. And Black country star Darius Rucker surprised travelers with an impromptu performance at Nashville International Airport. A fan video shows the Wagon Wheel singer performing for a small crowd near a Christmas tree. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
In Anaheim Hills on the 91 westbound before you get to Imperial Highway, they had a crash blocking the two left lanes. They just did a break and got everything over to the right shoulder. Still a little bit of slowing, I'd say, from at least Ware Canyon. Now past that, right at Lakeview, they did get that stall cleared from the lanes as well. In Industry, 60 eastbound right at 7th Avenue, we've got a crash involving a big rig trying to make its way to the shoulder there.
For victims of drunk and drug driving, our grief is unique. But you are not alone. You always have a place at MAD. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Back-to-back losses have put the Rams in a tough position for the NFC playoffs. The Rams failed to land the number 1 seed in the NFC and will not have a home playoff game. If Seattle beats San Francisco Saturday to claim the number 1 seed, the Rams will be the 5th seed and will play a wildcard game at Carolina or Tampa Bay. Whoever wins the NFC South. If San Francisco beats Seattle, the Rams fall to the number 6 seed, which will send them to Chicago or Philadelphia. Either scenario does not look good for the Rams. They need to put together a strong performance Sunday against Arizona in their final regular season game to tune up for the playoffs. It's going to be a bumpy ride in the postseason. Happy birthday to Tiger Woods. The 15-time major champion turned 50 today. Tiger is eligible for the PGA Senior Tour if he chooses to go that route. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
At the tone, please record your message.
You ready? Drop it! Mr. Tavis Smiley, preach it. Thank you, man. Politics in this country is crazy. You put things in perspective that even I didn't. The right is playing fast and loose with facts and scapegoating everyone under the sun, especially black and brown people. As a white man, I do not agree with this, and I am on my black and brown brothers and sisters' side. Fight the good fight. You know that I am part of the resistance. Let's fight the power.
Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
We ask seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month. If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. If you need help getting your resume in order, finding job training, or landing a job, we've got 3 great options for you. First, the City of Los Angeles has worksource centers across the area offering free job support. The California Workforce Development Board can help you with everything from GED prep to vocational training at no cost to you. On the federal level, the Department of Labor's American Job Centers offer a full range of services for job seekers and businesses alike. Visit careeronestop.org, or for more info, just call California's Help Center or visit cwdb.ca.gov or call 916-657-1440. For the City of Los Angeles programs, go to ewd.lacity.gov or call 213-744-7300. All these services are free to help you get your next job. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Folly drops the beat. Come on and talk with me.
Welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guest in this hour is none other than Liz King. Liz, I don't know what my future holds, and I don't even know if I'm going to ever make it to Capitol Hill. I'm going to do everything that I can, but let me tell you this. If I go back to Capitol Hill, I sure hope you go with me. Prior to joining the leadership conference, Ms. King served as Senior Policy Associate for the Education at the Children Defense Fund, where she focused on school discipline reform, school funding equity. King's policy advocacy and career began as legislative director for Congressman Shaka Fatah, one of my good friends, where she advised and represented the congressman on education, healthcare, women, children, and family policies. Liz, welcome forward to our show.
Thank you so much. You're very generous. You're very generous.
So grateful you're here, Liz. Liz, can I go back to this project for a minute? Because when we look at the scope of the project that we find ourselves in, I see a Democratic Party founded by Jefferson in 1791, 92, 93, somewhere in there. And it's a red party, a states' rights party, a local control party. And that party over time, that deeply red kind of pre-MAGA party, eventually becomes the party of Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, a deeply blue party. And then I see this deeply blue party in 1854, the Republican Party, wanting to stop the expansion of slavery in the Western states. And they nominated the candidate whose position, after the Lincoln-Douglas debates, came as close to it as possible, Abraham Lincoln, a deeply blue party that sought to save the Union, save the country, stop the expansion of slavery into the Western states. And over time, that blue party becomes a very, very red party of Jim Jordan, Marco Rubio, Donald John Trump, Elon Musk, the billionaire class, a deeply red party, essentially dismantling the federal government as we know it and returning power to the states. In a real sense, returning power to the very states' rights philosophy that Jefferson believed at the inception of the Democratic Party, even though we've moved on from that. And so it's easy to be confused if you don't see the history of women in that lineage, or the history of African Americans in that lineage, or the history of Native Americans in that lineage. If you just got off the boat at Ellis Island yesterday, or you came across the border, however you came across the border, northern or southern border, you're not going to understand the construction of this project unless you take a deep dive into the history, Liz, that you know all too well.
No, I think that we are being reminded so much of the importance of knowing our history. And when we're confronting this MAGA movement right now that is about regression, it's about backwards movement, and it is about sort of embracing in many ways, a version of history that never really did exist, but aspiring to a time in which democracy was not available, voting rights were not available, economic justice was not available. And this perspective, I mean, in so many ways, just getting back to the personal history, we think about Stephen Miller, we think about what the ways in which Stephen Miller's own ancestors would have been excluded, even Donald Trump, we think about the disenfranchisement of people of Scottish descent. I mean, it really is just nonsense. And one of the things that is incumbent upon us is to truly know and understand the facts of the history, because even this backwards movement is about romanticizing a history that no one should be glorifying, but that didn't even exist at the time. And so I think you're right. This knowing the history, understanding the history is such an important part of that. And one piece of this history that is undertold is how contested even the worst ideas were at the time. And you talked about how, even around the Declaration of Independence and that time leading up to the Constitution, there were many people advocating for full abolition of slavery who recognized that the United States would never be a democracy as long as slavery was allowed to continue. That conflict existed at the time, and obviously being driven by people of African descent, whether they were Africans or Americans, depending on what side of 1776 we're talking about. But there were people fighting for the 14th Amendment even before the Constitution was first created, and being reminded that there have always been those who have advocated for full democracy and inclusion. But absolutely, we need to tell this history. We need to know this history. Your point about Gettysburg, the Gettysburg Address, I think that is not, too often, that is not how we tell the story. Too often, we lose sight of the birth moment that was the Gettysburg Address and the role of Lincoln in shaping who we became, and thinking about how Donald Trump is seeking to undo that which Lincoln did, I think is something the American people need to understand, that he is trying to take away Lincoln. He is trying to undo Lincoln. He is trying to erase Lincoln from American history, and that cannot be allowed to happen.
Liz, you're making me go back to the campaign last season. I was campaigning in Philadelphia, in Gettysburg. I insisted that the Kamala Harris campaign go to Gettysburg. It fell on deaf ears. My father eventually, even in his current state, decided to come to Gettysburg with me. And I shared with him that I believe in God. But if God exists, and I know that God does, there is no doubt in my mind that God was in the middle of that field, because it's a turning point in our understanding of what we would become. God had to be present there. You can't always geopolitically locate God's presence. But what America became after Gettysburg, the role that she played in the world in fighting fascism and tyranny in Europe and feeding people around the world when America was having her better days, the role that America has played in diplomacy, in science, in technology, in even coming up with ideas of systems that do everything within their very limited power or limited understanding to eliminate poverty. America has always been the best chance that we've ever had to eradicate disease and to eradicate poverty from the earth. And I know that but for Gettysburg, we would not be the country that we are today. The turning point in human history and the 192 nations that decided to create a democracy modeled after the American Constitution is largely because of Gettysburg on that field. If you can hear my voice, you owe yourself a pilgrimage to go to Gettysburg and feel the presence of the divine in that location. I do want to move at some point, and soon, to the deconstruction project that we are presently in, because it seems not only, Liz, to be an attack directly on history, but it seems to be, as you've already noted, an attack on the forward motion of the history, which is, from my perspective, natural to human development and evolution.
I think you're absolutely right. I think, this forward movement, and I'm sure that Barbara Arnwine has been sharing with your listeners, this election, we cannot let a day go by between now and election day in 2026, because we know that a huge priority is going to be restricting access to the ballot and restricting access to the franchise, because the only reason we have ever made progress, and I think you've named the critical role that Lincoln as an individual and the words that he spoke at Gettysburg and the work that began, the critical role that played. But that work only became real when people voted for policymakers to create the laws, to create the 14th Amendment, to create the Civil Rights Acts. And I think it's just going to be such an important time for us to remind everyone we know that we've got to get out, we've got to vote. Everyone has to vote in every election. The president will not be on the ballot, but the future of American democracy absolutely will. And they're going to make it harder to vote, and we're going to have to find ways to overcome those barriers to the ballot. And so I think so much of the future and progress is going to be the question of whether we vote and whether our neighbors vote and whether we all come together and vote. And I think that question of the future is really absolutely where we need to turn our focus.
I couldn't agree more. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. We're lighting it up this evening with Liz King during drive time. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
My name is Tyrone Owens, and this is my home for 23 years that burned in the fire. Me and my wife, Charlene, we had this whole yard decorated every year.
This was the house that sparkled throughout the entire neighborhood on all the holidays. It's a community that will never be the same due to the negligence of a utility company. So I am pretty upset about that.
We were nowhere near being able to rebuild with our insurance. It's going to cost $1 million to put your house back up.
I want to get back back to that point where we were before the fire. I'm starting to get emotional, but I'll work through it. LA Fire Justice has been wonderful for us. They're just caring people. We have all faith in them.
Big ups to LA Fire Justice, who's given us hope to rebuild 100%.
Advertisement. Douglas Foster, 221 East Walnut Street, Suite 100, Pasadena, California, 91101 is the attorney responsible for this ad.
LA Fire Justice is proud to sponsor Conversation Live, Altadena Rising with James Farr on KBLA Talk 1580.
My mom has decided to learn to paint, and she's good.
My dad's now into creative cuisine, and I've already put on 6 pounds.
Learning new things comes with age.
My mom, she started forgetting my name and what we're talking about.
Forgetting well-known things doesn't. Memory loss may be a sign of Alzheimer's disease. Early detection gives you and your loved one time to plan for the future. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Febreze. It's a classic odor tale. You fried fish for dinner, cleaned up, but the smell is still in the house. And the neighbors are coming over for game night. They're on their way. And then you spray Febreze Air Mist. Febreze Air starts working instantly to fight even your toughest odors, so you go from fish to fresh like that. Now, all you have to worry about is Pam cheating at charades.
Breathe happy, Febreze, la 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 la.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you, when we fight, we win. The Youth Justice Coalition is challenging America's addiction to incarceration and discrimination. YJC works to dismantle policies leading to mass incarceration, law enforcement violence, and the school-to-prison pipeline. Their approach? Transformative justice, community intervention, free LA high school, legal defense, and system monitoring. YJC promotes safety without relying on prisons. Their goal? Prevent system contact and help people exit the system through direct action, advocacy, and education. Want to get involved or need help? Call 323-235-4243. That's 323-235-4243. Join YJC in creating change. When we fight, we win. KBLA Talk 1580, your voice for justice. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Volley drops the beat. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen
It's
to me.
Tuesday in our first hour on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show with our regular host every first and third Tenacious Tuesday. We'll have Liz King going into the new year, lighting it up. Liz, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you so much. Always great to be here.
Liz, I want to talk about the present deconstruction project because as I built at this house in my thinking, when I look at the founding of the Democratic Party in 1791-92, it really was a party, an agrarian party that sought to protect all of its local interests, including slavery, at the state level. States' rights. The Democratic Party at its inception was less government, less control, less regulation. We don't want you down here in our state telling us what to do with our Negroes. And then this Republican Party comes into existence in 1854, and there's obviously a major conflict that's developing because it comes into existence saying, you may protect your slaves in the southern states, but we're not going to let you carry slavery into the western states. And before Lincoln is even sworn in as president, a shot is fired at Fort Sumter in South Carolina. South Carolina secedes from the Union, followed by a series of states that essentially declare their independence and form a confederacy. But then it's really interesting. About 1935, 1936, the former Democrats begin moving to the Republican Party, but they move to the Republican Party as fiscal conservatives. They don't want the federal government coming into their states, telling them what to do in terms of workers' rights, women's rights, LGBTQ rights, civil rights. So you'll end up with George Wallace standing in the state, in the door of a school, with the president bringing the National Guard saying, you're going to let Black people in. You're going to have state troopers and National Guardsmen meeting John Lewis at the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And it's the Democratic Party that's welcoming them to their state and using the National Guard for the purposes of enforcing their states' rights to treat their Negroes and their minorities the way they want to in their states. And then we see in the Democratic Party around 1935 a shift to Keynesian economic programs where under Roosevelt, healthcare for all and Social Security and Medicare and programs began coming into existence, and a gravitation of African Americans from the party of Lincoln to the Democratic Party, because now that this country is moving in the direction of building post-Civil War a more perfect union, our allegiance ends up in Washington, not at the gubernatorial level or the state level, but with presidents of the United States who are advancing at least a common vision for the United States. You shared with us earlier that when Lincoln delivered his first inaugural address, he had one vision of America that was its reality. Something else happened, Liz, in his second inaugural address.
Yeah, and I think, what we see in Lincoln's second inaugural is the reference to the United States as a singular, right? So the first inaugural, it is these United States in the plural, this collection of individual states. And in the second inaugural, we see a reference to the United States as one nation, and this question of unity and togetherness and what it means for us all to be one nation together. And that, when you talk about the destruction project right now, that is what they seek to destroy. They seek to destroy unity, one nation. When Nancy Pelosi oversaw the construction of the Capitol Visitor Center, which is amazing, and everyone should go check it out, in the basement of the Capitol building, the emphasis and what you see everywhere, it's on the mugs and the shirts and everywhere on the wall, is E pluribus unum. It is this motto. It is this message of unity. It is this embracing of diversity, out of many, one. And that this anti-DEI agenda, this attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion, this attack on the federal government, all of these attacks are about undermining E pluribus unum. It is a destruction agenda. It is about unmaking the United States. It is about undoing the work of the Gettysburg Address. It is about undoing the work of Reconstruction. And I think, we have to become nation builders. That's what we do now, right? And when King was asked about integrating into a burning house, a reasonable question, right? The United States is on fire. Why would we integrate into a burning house? What are we going to do? And King says, we all have to become firefighters. And it is now time for all of us to become nation builders. And that means being a nation builder means being a voter. It means somebody who brings 5 friends with them to the polls. It means calling the Capitol switchboard. It means showing up at No King's protests. It means speaking out in local government. And I think this question of what does it mean to be a nation builder and how can all of us play a role in nation building? Some people now are doing the physical work of rebuilding. We know that for people in Los Angeles, there is so much physical rebuilding, for example, to be done, and the physical rebuilding of communities. And we also need to be at the same time nation builders who contribute to this project of America, who resist the destruction agenda and work towards a proactive building an agenda, a future agenda, and all of us together agenda, an E pluribus unum agenda, a July 4th agenda. And so I think you have sort of laid out so well this question of what does July 4th mean? And Frederick Douglass says, what does July 4th mean? I keep thinking about Langston Hughes and his poem, I Too, and the critical role. I would like us to get to a place where we view that Langston Hughes poem, America never was America to me, but America will be. That needs to live next to the Declaration of Independence. That's who we deserve to become. That is the America that we all deserve. And I think, there's just so much here to think about going into a new year, going into this 250th anniversary of that one founding document, thinking about all the 250th anniversaries to come of the Constitution, of the Civil War, of the Reconstruction, and the 14th Amendment. What does it mean for us all to be nation builders? And I think that is the question for 2026, is how can I be a nation builder? What is my role as a nation builder? what should the future of our nation look like? And I think, we're coming to the end of one really brutal year and looking forward to a brighter future. And I think those of us, I think of it, Gwendolyn Brooks, right? A wonderful Chicagoan, Gwendolyn Brooks, speech to the Progress Toward, right? It cannot always be night. And joy cometh in the morning. What does the future look like, and how do all of us work together to build the future we all deserve?
We're going to be defining over the next year the true meaning of the Declaration of Independence. I don't know how anyone's going to be able to escape that, and I feel like the luckiest co-host in the world to have Liz King to critique on a weekly basis, a bi-monthly basis, the issues that force this particular reflection of what we are becoming, what we have been, and what we are as a nation, and the role each of us has and plays and shall play in whether or not the Constitution itself endures. In this hour, Liz, I'm a little pessimistic, a lot more pessimistic than I've ever been. It feels that the debate that we're going to have and discussions that we will have around the Declaration of Independence will certainly show a resilience in our desire to expand beyond just men. But I'm not so sure that with the court in play and what we've seen with the executive and the cowardice, if you will, of the Congress of the United States, that it is not the Constitution is far weaker than the people's resolve on the questions that we hold dear. Liz, a final minute and a half for a word of hope.
Now is a time for nation building. Now is a time for nation building, and every one of us, every child, every person in every neighborhood, no matter how much power you have, you can be a nation builder. And that is what this country has always been and will always be. This is a challenging time. This is some of the hardest times we've ever seen as a nation. But together we will build the nation we all deserve. Together we will build the nation that Lincoln aspired to in that Gettysburg Address. We will create the 1776, the July 4th that we deserved then, that we deserve now, and that our children and our grandchildren, our great-great-grandchildren deserve into the future.
Happy New Year, Liz King.
Happy New Year, Congressman. It's always wonderful to be with you.
I am so glad that you're here and a participant in our show. Your mind is so important, and your thinking at this hour in our nation's history, and I'm grateful that you are lending it to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. We have a lot more coming with Barbara Arnwine in the next hour on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. This is our final show on the J Lunch Club 2025. We'll be playing some of our past shows over the course of the remainder of the week. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Alexandria Ikamoni with BIN News Now. Pro boxer Anthony Joshua is recovering following a car crash that killed 2 friends and teammates in Nigeria. The Nigerian-British man was believed to be in the back of a vehicle when the crash occurred. Local authorities say the former heavyweight champion suffered minor injuries and was taken to an undisclosed hospital for medical attention.